I was standing on my own front porch holding a bag of brand new locks when my HOA president called 911 and told the police I was breaking into someone else's home. And 10 minutes later, when those officers stepped out of their cruisers and saluted me instead of arresting me, Karen froze so hard you'd think time itself stopped. That moment should have ended everything. But really, it was only the beginning. My name is James Carter, and I moved into Maplewood Estates because I wanted peace. After 20 years in federal service, U.S. Marshals, Deputy Director, Tactical Operations, Fugitive Recovery, I thought a quiet little suburban neighborhood might finally give me a chance to breathe. Turns out I traded cartel shootouts and arrest warrants for something much worse. A woman with a clipboard, a lavender blazer, and a God complex. When I first met her, she stepped onto my lawn like she was stepping onto a battlefield. "Welcome to Maplewood Estates," she said, adjusting her sunglasses as if interrogating me. "We'll get you added to the registry." I remember wondering what kind of registry she meant because her tone made it sound like she was entering me into a criminal database. The next morning, a 50-page welcome packet showed up at my door. Rules about everything: curtain opacity, mailbox height, the exact number of inches your trash bin can be visible after pickup. I thought it was annoying, sure, but harmless. Just suburban overmanagement. I was wrong. Karen didn't enforce rules. She weaponized them. On day 4, I got my first violation trash bin visible for 6 minutes after pickup. 6 minutes. She timed me. Then it was porch light too warm, flag size inconsistent with neighboring displays, lawn height approaching non-compliant measurement. I laughed the letters off at first. After years of people shooting at me, a suburban hall monitor wasn't exactly terrifying. But then something happened that crossed every line. I had flown to D.C. for a 3-day seminar. When I returned, something felt off. The back door was slightly open. There was a faint scent of lavender perfume. My dining chair was moved. Muddy footprints near my office. Instinct kicked in immediately. Someone had been inside. But nothing was stolen. Electronics untouched. Documents shifted. And that's when the pit in my stomach formed. I checked my security cameras, and there she was, Karen Whitmore, walking straight through my backyard gate with a maintenance guy in tow like she owned the place. No knock, no notice. Just strolling inside my home, checking my thermostat, opening my refrigerator, flipping through my mail. She even paused in my office, rifling through paperwork and taking photos like she was gathering evidence for a case that didn't exist. I just sat there at my dining table, jaw clenched, playing the footage over and over. This wasn't micromanagement. It wasn't even nosiness. It was a break-in, a violation. A woman drunk on fake authority deciding my house was just another item on her checklist. I didn't confront her that night. Yelling at people like Karen only feeds them. Instead, I archived the footage, labeled everything, and sent it to my lawyer. Then I decided new locks. No way was she walking back in. The next afternoon, Roy the locksmith I knew from my marshal's days pulled into my driveway. And like she lived underground and sensed vibrations, Karen popped out of nowhere. She marched across the street, hair bouncing, clipboard locked and loaded. "Excuse me. This property modification wasn't approved by the HOA. Roy blinked at her. "Modification?" I kept my voice calm. "Just keep working." She jabbed the clipboard in my direction. "All exterior fixtures must be approved. That includes locks. So I need your permission to secure my own home," I asked. Her jaw twitched. "We have procedures. Like the procedure you used when you let yourself inside while I was gone." For the first time, she flinched. Not much, but enough. "You don't know what you're implying," she snapped, storming off while whisper-shouting into her phone. Roy muttered, She's calling someone." "Oh yeah," I said. "She's calling everyone." 5 minutes later, Karen was pacing on her porch, yelling into the phone like she was dispatching SWAT. "Yes, officer. He's breaking into the house. I think it's stolen property. He's aggressive." Aggressive? I was literally holding a coffee mug that said "World's Most Patient Man." Then the distant sirens started. Neighbors peeked behind blinds. One guy pulled out his phone to record. Karen stood proudly at the end of my driveway, arms folded, ready to watch the show. But the show wasn't the one she thought she ordered. The police cruisers pulled up. She ran toward them like she was leading them to a fugitive. "There. That's him. He's breaking in. The officers stepped out, scanning the scene. I stood on my porch, relaxed, sipping coffee. Roy just waved awkwardly. "Sir," one officer called out, "we received a report of a possible burglary. Can we see some ID?" "Sure," I said, reaching slowly into my pocket. "But before I do, you may want to hear something." Karen cut me off, yelling, "Don't listen to him. He's trespassing. I manage this community." The officers exchanged that quiet look the one cops give each other when they realize they've got a dramatic caller on their hands. I pulled out my wallet, flipped it open, and revealed my badge. The reaction was instant. Both officers straightened like someone snapped a ruler behind them. Deputy Director Carter, one said, stunned. "Former," I corrected. "Now just trying to change the locks on my own home." They saluted. Karen's mouth dropped open so wide I swear I saw daylight through her skull. When I played the break-in footage for them, the officer couldn't help himself. A tiny smirk appeared. "Ma'am, that looks exactly like you." The neighbors started whispering. Someone chuckled. Karen kept insisting, "This is harassment. This is illegal." But the more she talked, the more ridiculous she sounded. Finally, the officer said, "Ma'am, making a false emergency call is a serious offense. Maybe go home and rethink things." She stormed off, her Pomeranian yapping like a tiny backup singer to her rage. I wish that had been the end of it. But people like Karen don't accept consequences. They reload. An hour later, a notice from the HOA showed up in my mailbox. Unauthorized lock change. Potential fines. I laughed out loud. She had just gotten verbally body slammed by the police and immediately ran home to file paperwork like a wounded tyrant. The next morning, things escalated. A hand-delivered summons ordered me to appear before the HOA board for multiple violations. When I stepped outside, neighbors peeked at me, curious, sympathetic, entertained. Maplewood Estates loved drama. They just hated being victims of it. Karen, meanwhile, was on her porch again, whisper yelling into her phone. "He embarrassed me. He's turning the neighborhood against me. The HOA must act." I'll admit something now. That was the moment I felt exhausted. I didn't move here for battle. I moved here for quiet mornings, clean air, a house where I didn't have to watch my back. And somehow this woman, this suburban dictator, dragged me into a conflict that felt completely absurd compared to everything I'd done in my life. I actually caught myself wondering, should I just leave? Let her win. Maybe peaceful people don't belong in neighborhoods with tyrants. But then I remembered the look in her eyes when she led the police toward me, like she genuinely wanted to see me punished for something she created. That wasn't leadership. It wasn't community. It was control. And I've spent 20 years dealing with people who abuse control. So no, I wasn't leaving. I was standing up. The HOA hearing felt like a courtroom full of folding chairs and cheap coffee. Residents packed the room, whispering, ready to witness the showdown. Karen sat front and center in her purple blazer. Stacks of papers towered around her like legal ammunition. "Mr. Carter," she started, voice dripping with fake politeness, "you have violated community standards. You called the police on me for changing locks," I said. She glared. "You embarrassed this community by attracting law enforcement attention." Walter, the only board member with a brain, cleared his throat. "Karen, didn't you call 911? She ignored him. His hostility is unacceptable. Standing on my porch drinking coffee, I asked. Laughter erupted. That made her slam her palm on the table. "This is not a joke." "No," I said calmly, reaching into my briefcase, "but this is—" I placed a folder on the table and slid out the printed screenshots. Karen walking into my home. Karen flipping through my mail. Karen leaving through my back door. The board leaned in so close they nearly headbutted each other. "That's your blazer," Walter said. "The lavender one. You wore it at the Easter brunch." The room rippled with gasps. Someone whispered, "She's done." Right then, 2 sheriff's deputies walked into the room. Everyone turned. Karen's eyes widened like she was watching the execution of her own career. "Mrs. Whitmore," one deputy said, "we're here to serve a cease and desist order. You are to refrain from contacting or approaching Mr. Carter." Karen looked like she might actually faint. "You can't do this," she hissed. "This is my community." I shook my head. "Not anymore." She tried pointing at me again, blaming me, accusing me, claiming I manipulated everyone. But it was too late. Her power had evaporated the moment people saw who she really was. The board voted to suspend her. The neighbors exhaled like they'd been holding their breath for years. By sunset, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. And just like that, the tyrant collapsed. She packed her belongings quietly, blinds drawn, no more screaming, no more threats. The day she left, she didn't look at anyone, not even me. Her car rolled down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. That's where this story ends, not with a celebration, not with a barbecue or champagne or a community parade. It ends with silence. The kind of silence you only get when someone who's been shouting for years finally runs out of power. And the lesson: sometimes the loudest person in the neighborhood isn't the strongest. They're just the most afraid.